Welcome back, everyone. Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the mechanics behind a rapidly shifting global dynamic, specifically how China is leveraging energy networks and artificial intelligence to actively challenge U.S. global influence. The landscape is quite literally transforming under our feet, so let's make sense of exactly how it's all unfolding.
To set the stage here, consider this recent quote from President Donald Trump right before his meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. He confidently asserted, "We're leading China in AI. I'll say I'm leading. We have very friendly competition." Now that's the prevailing political rhetoric right now, a projection of clear American supremacy in the tech sector. But to really get a grip on the geopolitical reality, well, we've got to look past the rhetoric and dig into the hard data.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark contrast when you look at reports from Stanford's Institute for Human-Centered AI. Their latest index drops a bit of a bombshell, stating the gap in AI performance between the two nations has now effectively closed. So the reality on the ground? The minute an American model edges ahead, Chinese models just rapidly close that gap. The comfortable margin of American dominance we used to see is, practically speaking, vanishing.
To understand how we got here, here is our roadmap for today. First up, shadow fleets and the petro-yuan. Second, the AI race and domestic chips. Third, the robotic revolution. And finally, Taiwan and geopolitical shockwaves. These might sound like totally separate battlegrounds, but trust me, they are deeply interconnected pieces of one massive global strategy.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Shadow fleets and petro-yuan. Bypassing energy sanctions.
So, despite Washington recently blacklisting a dozen people and entities tied to Iranian oil moving into China, the oil just keeps flowing. How? Well, it comes down to the clandestine mechanics of the shadow fleet. It's basically a highly coordinated, illicit three-step process. Step 1. Sanctioned oil gets loaded up in Iran. Step 2. And this is where the evasion happens. Ships like the Iranian-flagged vessel Herbie head to what are essentially floating gas stations off the coast of Malaysia. They turn off their tracking devices entirely and do ship-to-ship transfers in the dark. Then, step 3, those receiving vessels blend right back into the thousands of regular commercial ships heading to China. By the time that oil hits the heavily guarded coastal refineries, tracing it is nearly impossible.
But here's the fascinating twist. While China is keeping the lights on with this shadow fleet, they're simultaneously crushing it in the green energy transition. We're talking massive investments in solar, wind, and EVs. In fact, their domestic automaker BYD actually overtook Tesla in global sales recently. Because of all this, China claims they are cutting their own oil demand by over 1 million barrels a day. And what are they doing with that remaining oil trade? They're using it as leverage against the US dollar. Iranian officials are openly pushing to sell this oil in a Chinese petro-yuan. It's a highly calculated move designed to chip away at the petrodollar, which has literally been the backbone of global oil trading for decades.
Moving on to Section 2. AI race and domestic chips. The innovation workaround.
If the energy sector is all about bypassing financial sanctions, the tech sector is about bypassing hardware restrictions. U.S. attempts to constrain China's access to cutting-edge tech have actually forced this incredible, massive wave of adaptation. And the numbers here brilliantly illustrate the sheer uphill battle China was facing. Look at this massive disparity in private AI investment. The U.S. pumped in roughly $280 billion, while China saw only about $12 billion. I mean, the U.S. outspends China 23-1 in the private sector. With the financial gap that wide, you'd absolutely expect American dominance to be a lock, which makes China's ability to catch up just staggering.
So how exactly did they catch up? Let's look at the Chinese startup DeepSeek. Their R1 model completely shocked the industry, delivering near state-of-the-art performance for a fraction of the cost. But it relied on US-made NVIDIA chips. Naturally, Washington tightened export controls on advanced hardware, like NVIDIA's Blackwell chips, hoping to choke off that progress. But DeepSeek just pivoted. Their new V4 model runs entirely on domestically produced chips. This is absolutely crucial to understand. Domestic chip innovation has allowed Chinese firms to completely bypass US export controls. They've done it by engineering incredibly efficient software that squeezes maximum performance out of older, less advanced hardware.
Now, to be totally objective here, it is important to understand exactly how the U.S. views this rapid progress. The White House actually accuses Chinese AI firms of running industrial-scale campaigns to copy American models. They specifically point to a process known as distillation. Basically, distillation is a technique where you essentially take the knowledge and capabilities from a massive, advanced AI model and transfer it into a smaller, cheaper one. Beijing, however, firmly rejects these claims, calling them completely groundless and just deliberate attacks on their legitimate technological innovation.
What we're seeing emerge from this dynamic is a totally unique alternative ecosystem. Instead of just throwing raw, expensive processing power at the problem, like a lot of American labs do, Chinese AI strategies are just different. Like we discussed, they're aggressively squeezing more performance out of domestic chips. But beyond that, they are heavily leaning into an open-source strategy. They're actually giving away their internal model weights for free to build this massive global community and just harness those network effects. And on the academic side, they are now leading the world in AI research publications. They aren't just playing catch-up, they're playing a completely different game entirely.
Which brings us to Section 3, the robotic revolution, machines outpacing humans. Okay, I want you to keep this specific time in your head, 50 minutes and 26 seconds. Why does that matter? Well, yesterday in Beijing, at an annual humanoid robot half marathon, a Chinese android named Lightning crossed the finish line in exactly that time. That is over 6 minutes faster than the human world record for a half marathon. Think about that for a second. A machine didn't just participate, it literally outpaced the absolute greatest human athletes on the planet.
Now, running marathons makes for amazing viral video, for sure, but the true geopolitical implications here are way more serious. When you take these incredibly capable physical robots and pair them with the large language models we were just talking about, you get a machine that acts like a coworker. You can literally just say, hey, pick up the blue box, and it understands and executes. This points to a massive transformation and potential replacement of industrial factory jobs. We're talking about a workforce that literally never tires. And let's be real, it is a very short pipeline from industrial robotics to military application. In fact, both the U.S. Office of Naval Research and China's PLA are heavily funding these exact robotics initiatives to see how they might handle heavy munitions.
That brings us to Section 4, Taiwan and geopolitical shockwaves, two visions for the future. All of these monumental leaps in energy independence and AI connect directly back to the diplomatic tensions we're seeing globally, especially surrounding Taiwan. As the Trump-Xi summit approaches, Taiwan is right in the middle of these shockwaves. Internally, Taiwan is experiencing an intense debate between two radically different visions for the future. On one side, the opposition party, the KMT, led by figures like Chung Li-wen, is pushing hard for direct dialogue with Beijing. They are prioritizing peaceful coexistence and even actively trimming budgets for domestic drone programs. On the flip side, you have the ruling party, the DPP, who, backed by the U.S., is urgently pushing to pass a $15 billion defense bill to heavily bolster military deterrence against a potential Chinese action.
But despite the KMT's hopes that peaceful coexistence is possible without heavy armaments, the physical reality on the ground is a bit more complex. Even while Taiwanese opposition leaders were physically in Beijing, having closed-door diplomatic meetings, Chinese military pressure, we're talking fighter jets, warships, continued to routinely circle the island, running continuous military drills.
Finally, Section 5, a new era of competition. Who is winning?
Bringing all of these threads together, from the shadow fleets and domestic AI chips to marathon-running robots and military posturing, we really have to look at how the Chinese public is reacting to this two-front challenge. If you look at heavily monitored Chinese social media, the sentiment right now is incredibly confident. Users are actively circulating AI-generated videos mocking American politics and U.S. involvement in the Middle East. There's this pervasive, popular narrative that the U.S. simply lacks the credibility to broker global peace anymore. In fact, a lot of the public is openly declaring China the real winner of these current global tensions. Their logic? While the U.S. is bogged down defending the old petrodollar, China has already moved ahead into the next era, dominating green energy and open-source AI.
Which brings us to one crucial final thought. We've seen how China is actively rewriting the rules of global energy through shadow fleets. We've seen how they are completely innovating around hardware sanctions, using domestic chips to bypass export controls and power AI. We've even seen robots outrun our best athletes. So we leave you with this question. As the physical and intellectual limits of technology vanish, what role will humans and traditional diplomacy actually play in this next era of superpower competition? It is a question that's going to define our future. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you in the next one.